doing this again.
My pleasure.
Sorry for being 3 minutes late. I thought there was another Zoom call for some reason, then it ended. So I was kind of like, I don't know what happened. But then you were waiting in this one. So I'm like, oh, I better get in.
Yeah, I've created a Zoom link, but in my Zoom link, you said, here's the link to your Zoom link. So I've been sitting over here waiting on this one.
So many Zoom links. You're very, very busy doing a lot of interviews.
It's
Do
been
you like
crazy.
doing all of these interviews?
No.
Really?
I really like just being by myself, spending time with the cats. This has been necessary as
Right.
part of getting the mission out there, but it's not my forte.
No. I mean, I feel like it's cool getting to know people a little bit, if they're good conversationalists. That kind of shocks me because I was like looking at the calendar and everything, and I'm like, she's pretty booked up for the rest of the month. Like, there's a lot going on, and you don't like it. That's interesting.
It was funny. My husband and I were just coming back from another interview this morning, and we were discussing how when you're trying to get your point of view across to another person, and he said, well, it's not like a conversation that you would have between friends where you're just sitting around talking. And I'm like, I would never just be sitting around talking to anybody.
Right.
I don't understand that.
Do you think you're extroverted or introverted in that sense then?
Oh, definitely introverted.
Really? It's weird. I'm the same way, grew up the same way, and then I became a talk show host. It's funny how that turned out. It's so ironic. I'm still very much an introvert, like I will not talk unless I'm talked to. But at the same time, I reach out to all of these people to just because I'm curious, like I'm reaching out to you again. I'm glad we were able to set this up. On the topic of conversation, though, like you guys have been doing that conversation game the past 3 days.
Conversation game?
Yeah, it was like a 3-day event that I heard you guys were doing. It was like the conversation game on, what was it, on Watch or something?
It's the conservation game, not the conversation game. I'm all about the conservation game. And it is airing the 14th, 15th, and 16th. And then tonight we're going to have 2 Zoom meetings on that, one at 8 p.m. and one at 11 p.m. for everybody who bought a ticket and watched to come in and talk to me and the producer and the star of the show, which is Tim Harrison.
Wow. So now that you caught me for not really doing my homework on that and kind of messing that up, what was kind of the idea about it? Are you enjoying that? Because I feel like that's way more up your alley as opposed to a conversation game.
Yes. Although I do think that we come here to learn the lessons that we need to learn in each lifetime. And so for introverts, I think we're being forced into these situations where we have to talk to people and have to put ourselves out there. So I see that you are learning the same lessons I am.
Oh, my goodness.
So for the conservation game, that was actually a film we worked on for 5 years, same amount of time that we were working with the producers of Tiger King. And the conservation game was a film by Mike Webber, and the star of it is Tim Harrison. I only play a very small role. My husband and I are in there very briefly. But it's talking about how this whole problem in the United States started with big cats. We all know that there's a big problem with there being so many lions and tigers and leopards in people's backyards and basements. But if you think about how did that ever get started? What caused that? And what caused that was people would see these faux conservationists like Jack Hanna or Dave Salmoni or the Irwins or Boone Smith going on to the talk shows and taking cute, cuddly baby tigers and lions and snow leopards. And the whole time that they're passing these cute babies around and the talk show hosts are laughing and having fun and everybody's just fawning all over the person who brought this cub, they're saying, oh, don't do this at home. These animals belong in the wild and they came from this really famous zoo and they're going to go back to this really famous zoo. And turns out that was all a lie. They were dealing with these same backyard breeders that you see in Tiger King. And as soon as they were done dumping the cat onto the host's lap at the end of the thing, they go back to whatever hellhole they came from. And so that's what the conservation game is about. It was an undercover for 5 years investigating all of these horrific situations that caused people to see that and think, I want to have a tiger. I want to be that cool guy that has a cub on a leash. And that's, it created this industry that will pander to the public's desire to have something that they should never be allowed to have.
That's very interesting. That's kind of what the whole basis is about Cage Fight too, right? Like you guys are going undercover in a sense, under investigation, trying to figure out all of these different scams, right?
Right. And, we know that this stuff is happening. Like, we can do the math. If you have 30 cubs born at your facility this summer for your pay to play trade, but your census only goes up by 2 cats, then we know there's a bunch of missing cats. And so this has been a matter of trying to figure out, and the conservation game did the same thing. It was looking for all of these missing cats. Where did those cats end up? And so both Cage Fight and the conservation game actually take the viewer along with them as we learn this is what really happened to these animals. Or in some cases, we can't find these animals anywhere and nobody cares. The people who were telling you they cared so much about conservation don't care what happened to those animals.
I feel like it's very tough to tell who cares and who doesn't, especially now that you're involved in the media game. Because even with, Cage Fight and then the conservation game, like, did they come to you with both of those? Because I feel like these were more things that you were passionate about, as opposed to, Tiger King kind of being manipulated into that game and that documentary coming out in the way that you didn't expect it to come out. But was this something more like they pitched it to you and it was more up your alley? Like, this is definitely something I would want to pursue?
Yeah, I mean, all of them pitched us. We don't go out looking for film crews or production companies or any of that. It's always been people coming to us. And for years, people have come to us saying, we want to, cover the work that you do at the sanctuary and the rescues and the rehab and release and all of that kind of stuff. And then when they would get to the networks would say, oh, she's such a controversial character. She doesn't like zoos. She doesn't think these cats belong in cages. And now people finally are, they've come along to that kind of thinking. And so now I'm not so controversial as I was 20, 30 years ago.
It's interesting too, because you're like very, very good at promoting and marketing what you've had obviously been doing your entire life, especially over the past 10 years when social media comes out and the internet and everything, building your website. But at the same time, when it comes to actual like camera footage and obviously now the media getting involved and everybody knowing who you are and, your story, whether, the tall lies, the truths to it as well. Like it's very interesting that like this concept of, doing interviews and everything that you're just not interested in, it's kind of like all intertwined in today's world. It's like something you have to do.
It is. And, from as soon as video cameras were, something that we could use around the sanctuary, I thought this is the way we get our message out about why these cats don't belong in cages. We show these amazing animals who all have these wonderful personalities and people get to know their personalities. And all of a sudden you're like, it's so wrong that they're in jail. And my intent had always been to create these heroes out of the people who work with the cats. And so you'll notice in almost all of the footage, our decades of footage that we have of the sanctuary, there's hardly ever me in a film. I am the only time you ever see me in a film is when I'm doing the daily briefings, which are not even on our main channel, where I'm talking about all the work that our volunteers did that day. And so I wanted those people to be the ones that got the spotlight, got the attention, because I didn't want to be in that role. I just wanted to make sure that the cats got their voice out there by using all of the great things that go on at the sanctuary. And we even had one of our previous operations managers became the Animal Planet Hero of the Year. And I was like, yes, we finally managed to accomplish this. And, we had made him to look like such a huge hero. And then he decided he wanted to go off and do films on his own and not work at the sanctuary. And so I ended up hiring somebody else who did an amazing job. And yesterday she did heroes work on a bobcat rescue that we just did the day before. So it's been weird, and I don't like being the subject of the footage and would much rather it be on the people who work here and do the amazing hands-on work with the cats.
So how has business been since the last time we talked? Has it been overall a progressive year for you guys, or have you taken some steps back when it comes to big cat rescue and everything else going on?
We had to close our gates on March the 15th of 2020 because of COVID. And then on March 20th was when Tiger King came out. And so we have not been able to reopen, and that's costing us over $1 million a year in the tour revenue. And so our donations have stayed pretty close to the same. 2019 and 2020 were pretty much even with each other. I think we're a little bit down right now from either of those years, but the year's not over yet. So it could come back. It takes one large donor to make that difference.
I mean, that's unfortunate, but I know like you've been doing this again, like this is your passion. This is what you do. I feel also like even though it wasn't exactly what you thought it was going to be, given the success of Tiger King as well as Cage Fight Out now and all of, again, back to the media appearances and everything kind of blowing up, it's been able to, in a sense, not to talk money terms, but I feel like that's kind of been a good thing during this time for you guys.
No, about that.
Really?
Well, yeah, I hear a lot of people say that the publicity has really helped us get our message out there. And yet the publicity was all so negative that it didn't, if somebody were saying all those kinds of things about you that they're saying about me, does that help you get anything done in your life? No, you just spend all of your time having to defend yourself against false allegations and trying to keep reminding people there's something bigger here than worrying about my life. We're going to lose the tiger in the wild in the next 5 years if we don't stop breeding them for life in cages. And that's been really difficult to get the media to care about.
I feel like it's a double-edged sword for you too, because if you don't face it head on, people are just like, oh, she's going to be quiet about this stuff, which some people might tell you, like, it's better to just turn it off, stay away from it. But at the same time, like, it's kind of a lose-lose, which I definitely feel for you in that sense, sympathize with that, and the fact that there's really not a winning scenario for you when it comes to that.
Actually, our attorney just yesterday in court said that it's kind of the case of heads I win, tails you lose, going up against the huge powerhouse like Netflix and all of them.
I really like, and especially now with the second one coming out, you're not in that, right? Like there's no.
Well, that's why we filed a lawsuit, because they were going around after Tiger King became this huge runaway hit. They went out to the people who had been in it, trying to get them to sign new release forms. And what I was hearing from other people was that in addition to signing new release forms, what they were requiring in these new ones were, you can't talk to anybody but us. And I thought, that is just so wrong. If you're a documentary maker, which I don't believe they are, but I did when I was working with them because I didn't know what they were going to do. But if you're a documentary creator, you don't want to hide the truth from people. You don't want to restrain the people who are telling you that story from being able to ever talk about that story to anyone but you, because I think what they did was, or what they were planning to do was to manipulate that message like they did in Tiger King 1. So when they contacted me, I said, lose my number. And I thought that was the end of it until the trailer came out and I see that I'm in it. And I'm like, oh, heck no. And so that's why we had to file the lawsuit.
I mean, they told you it was for a different project initially, and that's what you agreed to. And then they manipulated it and became Tiger King, this huge Netflix series about, three big people, like, and especially like with your situation, almost all lies, so like that's definitely something that you can't trust. And then they come back and ask for permission to shoot another one. Like, what were they expecting?
They said, we want to clear the air. And I was like, how stupid do I look? Don't answer that.
Go back on everything that they made you out to be in the first one?
I have no idea what they meant by that, but I don't trust them.
So how have, obviously with business being, not completely shut down, but you guys having to, adapt given the times in the last 18 months or so, and all of this happening, now you having to, again, get the word out there via interviews like this. What do you guys do, personally to kind of take the ease off? Like, what are some hobbies you guys are doing? Like, what's going on, outside of business?
I just did something that I hadn't done since I moved here. I bought this house that I live on in the 80s, I think. And I've moved in and out of it because I lived at the sanctuary for a while, and then I came back to this house. We call it the Island because it's on 5 acres and it's surrounded by a creek. But it was a house that was built in the 70s, and it was in the same condition that it was in the 70s. I hadn't done anything on the outside of this house. And on the inside, I had the first thing I did when I moved in was I tore out all the carpet and put in tile because I'm allergic to allergic to cats and dust, and so it had to be something I could keep mopped and clean. And so inside, I'd hardly done anything either. So anyway, in the last year, I just went on a tear and I actually painted the house, and I did a lot of work outside in the yard on the landscaping, and just tried to make it something where every day when I came home, I was happy to see the house and happy to be here, because there's just been so much unhappiness for the last couple of years. And it's worked. It's painted seafoam green. It's very cheerful. Looks like something right out of the Bahamas.
Oh, that's fun. Right when you said that, like, yeah, I did something I've never done before in this house. Moved in the 80s. I'm like, oh my God, that's 40 years. What hasn't she done? I literally
everything.
I cleaned my car for the first time in months the other day, and I'm like, oh my God, I feel like a completely new person. Like, I don't know why I didn't do this months before. That's so funny. Do you guys watch any sports or anything like that? Do you guys have any interest in any of that stuff?
No, we work 7 days a week. We just celebrated our 19th anniversary together, Howie and I did. And he said, do you want to go over to the beach? And I was like, you know what? I just want to stay home and piddle around in the yard. So that's been the extent of our doing anything.
Outside of work, obviously, being an entrepreneur can be hellacious at times, especially in the early years. But have you guys picked up any new hobbies / talents in the last 18 months? Like, have you tried, picking up a guitar, trying to play that, doing odd things that you've never done before?
I always think it's funny when people say, oh, it must be wonderful to work for yourself. And it's like, are you kidding? I'm a slave master. I'm the worst person in the world for me to work for. But that's typically true of entrepreneurs. They push themselves harder than they'd ever push anybody else. No, I didn't take up any hobbies. They tried to teach me how to dance on Dancing with the Stars, but that was a lost cause. So no hobbies.
Again, something you didn't want to do, Dancing with the Stars. I feel like if I was approached with Dancing with the Stars, I'd be like, I guess like it would be good. Like, it'd be a cool story to tell one day, but at the same time, like, I don't want to dance. That seems really difficult too, to train.
It was a lot of work. And I mean, I was bleeding and had blisters all over my feet from it, because every hour that I wasn't doing some kind of media thing, I was practicing, because the longer I could stay on the show, the more we could talk about cats every week. And so I was determined to stay in it. And I learned by the third show that I just didn't have what it took.
I feel like you have to be a professional to do that. And I feel like those people are so strict about what they do too. Like, did anybody yell at you in a way, or try and like discipline you to be a better dancer while you were doing it?
Oh gosh, no, they were amazing. And they really are athletes. Those pros that they pair you up with, they are freaking amazing. Absolutely amazing.
So has there been anything since the whole Tiger King blow up that you've enjoyed on the media side when it comes to doing, I mean, obviously talk shows are probably so, draining at this point, but when it comes to like Dancing with the Stars or other projects that you've been able to be a part of, have you enjoyed any of it? Or has it all just been like, all right, let's just get this out of here. Let's get this out of the way.
Yeah. I've enjoyed the fact that Carole Baskin's Cage Fight is getting the word out there as far as what these places are really like, and that people are able to see for themselves what it is like. But as far as like being the person on camera, I don't enjoy that. And it's a lot of work. I mean, for that 2 hours that we put out, I bet we filmed for 100. And that's the other part of it. You film so much amazing stuff, and then you've got to condense it down to a 2-hour piece. And there was so much stuff on the cutting room floor that's like, this could be a show all in of itself. And so it was nice to be able to gather all of that. I don't know if any of it will ever be seen, but it was pretty amazing. And the nice thing about that too is a big part of what we do is gather evidence for law enforcement, because they don't do undercover work, and they can't catch these people. They don't work on weekends or at night. So these people know if you're going to do something illegal, do it on weekends or do it at night. And so by us gathering that information and having something that we can put with a complaint, it gives us, the power to say, this is going on and you need to do something about it.
Was it a much better overall vibe when it came to working with, the director and the writers and everything, of getting that message out there as opposed to just being lied to and manipulated into thinking it was something else?
In the 5 years that we were working with the producers of Tiger King, we thought we were working on a Blackfish for big cats. So we were happy to meet with them and happy to do the filming and talk about the issues. The only thing that we thought was weird was that they wanted to talk about Don so much. And, they said that the reason that they were doing that was because the animal abusers talk about it. The animal abusers can't talk about the issues. They can't, if you say, well, why are you breeding all these tigers? They'll say it's for conservation. And then you say, so how many of these cats ever go back to the wild? Zero. None of them are ever going back to the wild. And then it's like, well, where do all those cats go? Well, they can't talk about that either, because they're either killing them or they're sending them to backyards and basements of people that don't know what they're doing. So they can't talk about any of the issues. They have to just deflect away to anything else that the media will run with. And so they said that that was why they were asking, was they said, oh, the bad guys are going to say this about you and you just need to put it to rest. That was not what they did with it, but we had no idea that they were doing that until it came out.
Right. No, I mean, I remember talking to you about that a few months back, and it just being like, I don't understand how they would even come back and ask for another appearance or even more footage. So did they use footage from the first one in the second one, and that's what's going on right now?
Well, I don't know. We had asked in our lawsuit to see the footage and they refused to do it. And they said that it would take so many hours, it was just going to be months for them to try and take the footage out, that it just wouldn't be possible. So that tells me there's going to be a lot of that crap in there. And it was all filmed prior. It wasn't any filming after Tiger King came out, because by then I knew what they were going to do.
What do you think would be the pitch perfect project that you'd want to do? And again, you don't like it, I think we've established that, but if you were to direct a documentary or a film about all this way, the exact way that you would have wanted it to, obviously with Cage Fight, you're getting, the word out there in the way you want it to, but probably, working with people can't ever be easy. If you had one exact thing where you had complete creative control over something, what message would you want to get out there, and how would you want to film it?
It would be Cage Fight. It would just have a different array of stars. I would be doing the kind of work that I typically do, which is at my computer. It's finding these people, it's taking the reports from the public, and then assigning those out to the people in the field who are gathering that information. So that would be my perfect version of what Cage Fight would be. I'd never be on camera. I'd just be the voice behind the curtain.
Right. I mean, that's what everybody wants to be, I feel like. But again, you have been an entrepreneur doing your thing for many, many years, and you've been through the trials and the tribulations and everything. Like you said before, people must think it's awesome to work for yourself. You don't realize it's not an overnight thing. You were a 20-year overnight success. Most entrepreneurs are, right? Last thing I want to leave you with, I know we don't have a ton of time, don't want to take too much of your time, because I know you're very busy with all of this stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. But do you remember those early years and the early struggles? And do you remember, me as a young kid, as a young entrepreneur, going through the trials and the tribulations, trying to build this thing? What do you remember distinctively about being a young entrepreneur and those, again, trials, tribulations, those struggling times where you thought maybe I should pursue something else and get a 9-to-5 job?
My mother always said I should work for the post office because I love to walk and I love to be outside. But what I remember from that time was I started with so little. We started our real estate business with $2,000 buying a property, actually buying a mortgage and foreclosing on the mortgage. And when we did that, we made so much money off of it. We were like, dang, we need to do this again. And so what I had done was bought a delinquent mortgage from a bank. So I started going around to all of the banks and asking them if they had people who weren't paying their mortgages that we could buy at a discount. And then we could go work with the owners and say, look, I bought this for less than what you owed. And so we can bring your payments down. We can bring your payoff down to something more affordable for you. And then if they still wouldn't pay, or sometimes people were just already gone, then we would go ahead and foreclose and sell it to somebody else. Well, going to these places, I had $100 Impala that I drove. And this thing was as big as a freaking boat. It was like, a 1970s style Impala. And gas guzzler, oh man. And I can remember scraping together pennies to be able to put gas in my tank. And then I'd go to the bank and I'd park all the way around back because I didn't want anybody to see that I got out of that junk heap. And now I'm going to come in here and ask if I can buy your mortgages. And so I was always really self-conscious about how poor I was in the beginning. And that has stuck with me to the point where, I recently went in and I was buying a piece of jewelry for my daughter's birthday, and I was really, struggling over the fact that it was $300, and I just don't buy nice jewelry, and so $300 for me, and I got it for 60% off. So it was like, even at that, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so much to spend, and yet in the sanctuary, I have to raise between $3.5 and $4 million every year to keep that thing going. And in my real estate business, of course, it's a huge enterprise, but I just never got over feeling poor.
See, that's a great trait to have, though. Most people who come into great fortune don't have that trait, where like they get themselves into trouble, and then you're still looking at this like, I don't want to spend $10 at Subway for this sandwich. Like there's certain things you don't want to do. Did the real estate thing happen, kind of organically after? Because again, like the more you grow, the more you kind of evolve and have different interests. Was that something later on, or was that hand in hand with what you were doing?
The real estate business, I started that when I was 19 or 20. So I was coming out of, what was I doing at that time? I had worked at a gas station, and then I had worked at Tampa Boat Mart. And I remember going in and applying for this job, and they had this computer that, I kid you not, it took up like the whole wall back there. Back then, they were so gigantic. And it had a manual. It looked like an old telephone book. It was so big. And they bought this thing for their payroll. That was the only thing it was going to do, was payroll for this little boat mart that had maybe 6 employees. And nobody could operate the thing. And so they ran an ad in the paper, and they asked, anybody could come in and run this thing for them. And I didn't even have a high school education. I left high school in the 10th grade. But I went in and I was like, absolutely, I can run that computer. And I said, and in addition to that, even though you're offering this amount of pay, what I want is this amount of pay. And I forget what it was, but it was like double what they were offering. And I said, and what I'll do is I'll work for the lower amount for, I think it was like 6 weeks or something. And if at the end of 6 weeks, I haven't proven to you that I am worth the extra money, you can just let me go and hire somebody else. But if I have proven that I'm worth it, you have to pay me the double amount. And so she was like, whatever. And I don't think she ever thought I was going to figure out that computer or make it through the 6 weeks, but I did. And I was so proud of myself for getting that thing up and running and doing their payroll for them. But in the negotiation for that, what I said is, if this is a 9-to-5 job and these are the tasks that you want me to get done during that period of time, then what I want is the freedom to be able to do something else during this period of time. I just want to get the work done and not be held to a schedule. And so that gave me the freedom to then go and start investing in real estate. And I would look at 100 properties before I would even make a bid on 3 of them, because there's just not that many good deals. You got to look at a lot of junk to find something really worth doing and that I could afford. And so that gave me the freedom of having a job that was paying me a regular wage while I was able to build a real estate business.
See, that's very interesting. Like what you said in there, like leaving high school in 10th grade, like there's a lot of kids who don't really have the entrepreneurial mindset, who think like you got to get a diploma, you got to get a college degree, you got to get all of this jazz, Do you think school is as important today as it was back then? Like obviously it's important to build relationships with people and develop good social and communicative skills, but I don't think it's necessarily important to have quote unquote a degree. Like you actually need hands-on experience, and you need to know how to work with people in business.
Yeah, I think the school system is definitely broken, and probably everybody would agree with that.
Yeah.
But I do think you're right. There are social skills and team building skills and things like that that you can't learn at home. You've got to be able to interact with other people, which was hard for me because I would much rather learn at home. But those are really key skills to learn. And then what I think is wrong with the education system is it doesn't teach you how to do what you need to do to like be an adult, like how to balance your checkbook or how to run a business or how to be a good employee. Maybe you're not an entrepreneurial type, but there are definitely skills in being a good employee that earns their place in life. And none of that is taught. And so I if I were going to remake the entire system, I'd teach people things that they actually needed to know instead of algebra and French and how to play a horn.
Exactly. I had a math. It was like, I think geometry. I'm like, I'm not going to need to know any of this stuff. And he was just like, yeah, I know, but just do it. Like, really? That's what you're saying to me as a teacher in high school? That stinks. Do you have any more interviews today? Are you all booked?
I do.
Really? You have the rest of the day off?
No, I do have interviews. In fact, as soon as I hang up from here, I have 100 grass carp that are arriving that I have to go release into our lake to deal with the hydrilla that has taken over our lake.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Well, I'll let you go then. Thanks so much for coming on. You're a saint because I booked this before I even reached out to be like, oh, I should probably reach out to Carole again to see if she can actually do this or actually wants to do it, because I just took the calendar invite. I'm like, she's open on the 16th. We'll see if she wants to do it again because I really want to talk again. So you are a saint for, again, jumping on here with me without even agreeing to do it in the first place. So,
well, thank you, Jack. Sometimes stuff shows up on my calendar. I'm like, did I agree to this? I don't know if I agreed to this.
I am so sorry. I'm glad we were able to catch up again, and hopefully, if you're up for it, we could do this again one day. I promise it won't be anytime soon. I'll let you have a break. But again, you're very busy, and I applaud you. Very inspiring what you're doing during this time, continuing to do what you do with your passion. So thank you so much again, and I wish you the best moving forward.